Hello.
I'm just adjusting my mic, and we are on. Mr. Taco Truck.
Hello. How are you doing?
How are you, sir? I'm good, sir. How are you?
It's been a long week, and it's only midway through, but it's having a bank
Tell me
holiday at
about
the
it.
beginning is so problematic because I always forget
Do you get some
until it's
time
like,
off for that day off?
well, yeah, for sure. 'Cause I'm self-employed, so when it's a national bank holiday, I say, well, I get to take the day off, and legally, no one can say anything, so that's what I'm doing. But it always messes with my schedule because it. I mean, not always, but almost every. I think no, actually, I think every bank holiday in America, and I'm sure it's the same for the UK, is on a Monday.
Yeah. So yes, exactly. That's right. And yeah, same in Australia. We usually have it on a Monday, but if something
I think
lands
there may be
on,
one odd day that's like yeah, like Christmas or something like that, where it may land on an odd day. But generally speaking, when it's scheduled throughout the calendar year, they're always on a Monday. Like Labor Day, Memorial Day,
yeah,
and on the American calendar is always on a Monday, which messes with me particularly because most of my customers are not in the United States. So I take the day off,
right.
but then I go and look at my voicemail inbox and there's something like, well, yesterday there was 27 messages
Wow.
from people all over the place going, hey, we need, can you give us a call back at your earliest possible convenience? One person was having such a problem that they left 9 messages over the course of 10 hours. The first message, and then they waited 2 hours, and then every hour after that, they were calling, freaking
What?
out. And finally, at the very end, on the very last message, they said, well, I guess you're not going to call me back. So much for customer service, blah, 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 blah. And then partway through the message goes, oh, I think I just figured it out. It's right in front of me. Sorry.
It's the
Forget
day
forget it.
off.
I don't need any assistance. And that was it.
Wow.
And then this morning I got a text from them saying, sorry if I seemed a little strange the other day. I realize now that you guys are having a national holiday in America and you probably weren't working. And it turned out that it was something really stupid and it was in my manual. I just didn't read it. And I didn't have the heart to say anything back, but great. Have a wonderful day.
God. Yeah, no, it's some people are just a pain in the ass, to be honest.
Yep,
I'm just gonna switch
truly.
this off here.
I would agree with that.
There we go. So
They're the,
it's been
they're the
a
type of people who require a customer service line.
yeah, absolutely.
Not
But
a chat
customer service,
window. They require speaking to somebody, and preferably somebody who's not in Bangalore or Lagos. Preferably somebody just down the street.
yeah, it's it's an important thing though. Customer service, don't you think? And not saying that you're not giving it, but everyone's entitled to their day off, of course. But just to have that person to speak to like I know in Australia, so I was obviously living overseas for a while there, and then when I came back, I had to sort of set up my life and plug back into the system, and it was I'm just getting nothing but press one for this, press two for that, press three for this, and you'd go through the whole circuit and you still couldn't speak to anyone. At the end, it would send you to a website, and it was highly frustrating, really frustrating. So
Where were you living before you
I was living
returned to?
in Phuket, with Kaylee.
Oh yeah.
Yep,
Right.
yep. So I
Oh
was there
yeah,
for
right.
six
Well,
years. Yeah,
that's a challenging.
it was
I
challenging, all
mean,
right.
yeah, it's once you have your situation set up and all the services that you need and everything is situated and you've got everything sorted, it becomes easier. But it's still like I remember living in other places and even with understanding the language, it's always a little bit foreign. And so there's certain elements that you like to have, like for me, and it doesn't matter where I go. I make sure that one of the things that I do is before I ever get there is make sure that there's a pub nearby. No joke.
Well,
I'm
it's
not
true.
kidding.
To relieve
If it
the
doesn't have
pressure,
a
man.
if there's if there's no pub nearby after the end of my day of working or whatever I have to do, I'm gonna lose my shit. So there's like some bare minimum things that have to be in proximity. One of the other things is an ATM. I like to look for two, preferably one that's a third party and another that's bank owned by some bank, doesn't matter who. Just because the bank owned ones will usually operate international money advances, whereas
Yep.
the third
Yep. Yep.
parties won't. But the third parties will usually operate on some squirrely cards that the big banks won't, or they will be open at sometimes at the strangest hours if you need, that one last pint just before you go to sleep, just before you leave the pub. And hey, you're not working tomorrow, so what is it to anybody? But you look in your wallet and you're like, oh, no cash poor at the moment. But yeah, no, there's some basic things. And another one that I really seriously look for, and now with the advent of the internet it's become much easier, is any place I go to, I look for international food import stores.
Okay.
um so like in America, I know Cost Plus World Market is a fantastic one. I know in California there's a small chain of Irish owned import shops that have, like UK related goods, but also will carry a lot of the other stuff. So they'll carry stuff from like South Africa, they'll carry stuff from New Zealand and Australia and Singapore and Hong Kong and like all the other English speaking countries.
Hmm.
Um, and local cuisine is local cuisine is fine. In fact, what I prefer in any place that I travel to is to eat local cuisine. But occasionally, you want something that's not the local stuff. You want, Walker's ready salted crisps, or you want, um, you want a beer, you want some type of food or tea or something that is
Familiar. I hear you
familiar and
loud and clear
very,
on that.
very different from the local
Absolutely.
fare. And then while it's
Yep.
going to cost you a bit more, it's nice that in your home, while you're surrounded by the locals and surrounded by everything, and everybody speaks this foreign language, it's nice to early in the morning be able to make a pot of Barry's Irish tea
Yep.
and have that and sit there with a thing of shortbread, even while people are walking by, with like a cut of like an entire goat on their back just walking by, and you're like, right, okay, yep, this is the
Yeah,
foreign country that I currently live in. This is the
that's
experience
right.
that there is. And sometimes it's really lovely, and sometimes it's like, wait a minute, I just need to, just not to be too, you know full of myself or anything, but I just need to take a step back. I'll be over there in the corner having a American Marlboro, even though I'm not a smoker anymore, followed with, like the most grotesque American cup of drip coffee, just so that I can, for a fraction of a second, feel like I'm sitting at a motel in some bumfuck tourist town or something like that. Just for
Yeah,
a slice of something different, or even a slice of.
sure.
Sometimes it's comfort, and sometimes it's honestly just something different. Sometimes I'm looking for, like in Taiwan, there's a couple of really good German restaurants, and I seek them out because it is so far off the map. You're in Asia, and there's these incredible German restaurants with German chefs making, and also like Swiss restaurants. And there's like a beef noodle Taiwanese beef noodle house on the corner, and right next to it, there's like a huge grill out front with a whole bunch of bratwurst and and everything else under the sun, and beer
Yep.
flowing off the taps, and it's not a knockoff. It's a
Yeah,
German
that's
guy
right.
or a
The
German family who
legitimate.
moved
Yeah.
there. It's
Yep. Yep.
legitimate.
Yep. Yep. I had the same thing in
So,
Thailand, man. So I would, obviously I love Thai food. I love it. I love the
mhm,
spices. I love the range that it's got. It's one of the world's more popular foods too. And
mm,
you just I can get right into the cultures and eat anything, but it was just those moments where I'd crave my own food. Like I'm Italian descent, so I just crave like a bowl of pasta, and I used to have it
yeah,
every day here. I was like, I don't even care if I have it because I have it so much. But over there, and it's more expensive because it's not the local food too, right? So you
right.
go out and I just crave that bowl of gnocchi, or I
Well, or
crave a
if it's or if
pizza.
it's really if it's really specific, right? Like if it's like a spaghetti bolognese, and it's like you're after that homemade mirepoix carrot bolognese with like
Yes.
mince
Yes.
and everything, and you show up to like some random restaurant and it's sort of a spaghetti that you know for a fact came out of a package covered by a chopped
Yeah.
steak situation with like a tomato based sauce on top, and it's just this drizzly weird concoction. And the truth is, if you want the actual thing, you're going to pay for it,
Yes.
because
Right.
those
Exactly.
ingredients are not actually local. They're all not all, but a lot of them are imported. And the know-how to put them together to bring that flavor profile together is
It's skillful from that
it's
particular place. Yeah, you
it
can't just
is,
whip it
yeah.
up,
And
And
you
even
either
if
were
you
trained there classically, or you hired somebody who is from that place who knows the cuisine.
and it's super important to get those legitimate ingredients as well. Otherwise, it just doesn't come out the same. And
Oh yeah.
we did find that
Oh
there. So
oh. I've seen how, like, so in Israel, um, myself and a couple of other people that I worked with owned a pub together, like an expat sort of an Irish pub,
yep.
and we refused to get kosher certification because we wanted to be open on Shabbat. We wanted to serve a tourist expat market, and we did. That's what we were known for. Like the people who worked for the UN security mission, who would be in Jerusalem for their weekend holiday, they would come to our pub. The people who worked for the UN in Jerusalem would come over. The people who worked for Tony Blair's office would come over. People who worked for all the different, international missions. Everything's closed on Shabbat except for the non-kosher restaurants and bars and whatnot. So
Hmm.
we would stay open. But one of the things that we tried for the longest time, I think for almost 2 years, we tried to source a quality pepperoni for pizza. And it's not that they didn't make pepperoni in Israel. They do. They make it out of beef though, because, kosher. And
Yeah. Yep. Sure.
they leave all of the curing or not all, but a lot of the traditional curing elements that you would find like in the valley in Parma, a lot of
Hmm.
that stuff is completely left out of the equation, so that a lot of those key flavors are not present.
Right. Yep.
And it's
Okay.
close, but it's not quite what you're looking for. And
Sure.
finally, in the very, very end, we finally were able to source pepperoni from Napoli in huge, like, in like the
Quantities.
logs basically. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Yep.
have to slice it ourselves in the back on a meat slicer, because it was the only way of getting the correct thing
Well,
that
the
we were
legitimate.
after. We
Yeah,
had
the real thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we imported. We were not importing directly from Italy. We were buying from an importer, but we were purchasing semolina flour. We were purchasing olive oil from Bologna. Or from Ferrara actually. We were getting mozzarella from Bologna, and it was mozzarella di bufalo. We were going crazy overboard because we could. We were at an expat open pub. We had no problem with people coming in going, yeah, I'll pay 2 or 3x for an actual product that's made properly, and I don't have to get on a
Sure.
plane and fly there. Hell yeah,
Hmm.
that's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. So
Absolutely.
we had we had Mexican food on our menu. We had Italian food on
Wow.
our menu. We had all the things that you couldn't easily locate.
Yep.
Um, and we tried to do it as best as we could. And some people said, like, why don't you have more tacos on your menu? And I was like, well, because it's too difficult to source flour tortillas in this country. Nobody's manufacturing it. We don't want to make them. So we make stuff with corn. And corn tortillas for tacos, unless it's a fresh corn tortilla, is not very good. And our stuff is not very fresh. It was coming from a place in like Bulgaria that was making
Right.
tortillas and all sorts of other stuff. So it's like we knew we knew that our enchilada product was okay. We knew, like, and that it was good, but we knew that there were limitations. And when people said, well, why don't you have this or why don't you have that? It's because we looked into doing that, and you could pull it off, but it wasn't the same, and it was noticeable that something was off.
Right. Yep.
Um, so we just wouldn't make certain things. We just
That's right. No
left it
point.
off. There's no point.
Yep. Totally get that.
We tried to get Marmite for the longest time to make
Oh, why would
just
you do
for
that?
because we had like a lunch brunch situation on Sundays, and we would have, this huge like eggs Benedict bar, and this huge serve yourself Bloody Mary bar and all that kind of stuff. and there was, there's enough expats that wanted a range of other products, and so we would bring in, we try and sell other stuff or have other stuff available. And I remember trying to get Marmite, and that was so difficult because you could get the knockoff, but you couldn't get the actual Nestle product.
Right.
And
I'm
then,
not a fan of it anyway. I think it would scare people
yeah,
away. So
I think it's disgusting personally, but
yeah,
each to their own.
yeah, sure, absolutely. Different taste buds for different folks as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Some people like
Taco Truck.
drinking beers all the way to the bottom of the glass, and they like chewing on the bottom of their beer. So, some people are into yeast. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we got a bubble from Rocstedi, so we'll just pop it. I'm sure she's here to say hello. We've got the messages set to fans only at the moment. For messages, anyone can listen, but just fans only. And later on in the show, I'm just going to open it up to any of the listeners that want to ask any questions, because we're going to do the life of Taco Truck today. So let's just pop that
Oh,
bubble from Rocstedi, and we'll see what she's got to say.
Hey, good morning, Rocstedi. How are you? It's raining down in Wombra, raining non-stop. Rain, rain, rain. How are you? Hey, Taco Truck. How are you? You could hear the rain. It's raining non-stop.
I wish.
How
it was
are you?
raining
Hope
here.
you're well.
You want to swap?
Listening to you talk.
Thanks,
Rocstedi,
Lisa.
you're
Thanks for
welcome
the
to
tip
swap
before.
with me. We can do an even swap, but you have to take the American citizenship along with the swap and all the bullshit that comes along with that, and I get your citizenship. And then
You can come
2,
down under.
it's 46 degrees here and has been for 4.5 months.
What degrees Celsius?
Celsius, yeah, between 42 and
What?
46, and has not
That's
dropped below
insanely
that
hot.
even at night. So yeah,
Wow.
I would love a trade. Yeah, let's do
Wow.
that. Plus, believe it or not, I actually speak English, and I can spell in English too, properly.
But can you speak Australian? That's the question.
I mean,
Give us
give
your
me a
best
couple of
g'day, mate.
pints and a couple of whiskeys, and I'm sure.
So, Taco Truck. So we're just going to run over your life a little bit. So feel free to share what you want and what you don't want. You can pass on any questions or anything like that. So there's no harm in doing that if it's something's private. Like, I completely respect that. But I just wanted to sort of find out a bit about you. The whole point of conversations here with other people is just to connect people in stereo, and people aren't just avatars. We're more than that behind the avatar. So this is really trying to bring the life of a person to the avatar. And this is my second episode. The first one I did was with Mrs. Smitty, and it was really, really wonderful. And it definitely got me more of a closeness to Mrs. Smitty from that. Me personally, just understanding her life a little bit more. And I'll tell you, we were only, I've seen you around the streets. I've listened to your talks, and we only finally got to connect last week on a chat, which I really hit it off with you, man. I've got to say that.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Dude, I just,
That was so
you're on
much fun.
stereo, right? You meet people all the time, which is great. And there's every now and then you hit on someone where you go, hey, I really connected with that person. I really legitimately, genuinely felt that with you. I was like, cool, man. And I was doing this series. I was going to be doing a talk with 30 Scotty, and I've kind of just jumped to you right now because I really want to get into it.
Oh
I want to know
shit!
more about
I'm
Taco
sorry,
Truck,
Scotty.
Sorry, Scotty. You didn't get back in time. We got Taco Truck
He's
here
busy
in the
right now, I
meantime.
think, with Cece. So
Oh, and yeah, no, that's okay. I haven't organised a time with him. I've organised it with you. So, take us back, man. Tell us a little bit, like, where you were born. You don't have to be specific about your age, or if you want to, that's fine. How old you were, what you were born, whereabouts, what life was like for you as a child, a little bit. Do you want to start there?
sure. My parents, my dad's from Israel. My mummy is from Ireland, and they actually met in California. They were
Right.
both going to university in California, and they met in university, got married, had a kid here in the U.S. My sister Miley, and then my granddad sort of sweetened the pot to get them to come home,
Home to
if
where?
you will, home to Derry, home to Northern Ireland.
Okay.
And that was sometime in the late, or I think that was in 80. 84 or 85.
Around that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Something.
So
I
your
think it was
parents
actually,
were.
it was early. I think it was early 84 because I was born in Derry, but they had just moved back. And then my sister Rachel was also born there.
Okay.
Yeah, so my granddad basically had said, you know, I'm retiring and I want my kids to be near to me, and they were all over the place. My aunt was working in Holland, or she used to have a pharmaceutical drug company that she sold to Merck Pharmaceutical, but
Okay.
she was in Europe, and then like on the continent, and then my uncle was in California playing music with Lindsey Buckingham, and
Oh wow.
yeah, oh yeah, and
Mhm.
and there was a period there where he just, I guess he felt like he had more than enough money, and he would just pour money at it, throw money at the fire.
Right.
He offered I think everybody in my family got or every of my aunts and uncles. I think they all basically got the same offer, which is we'll purchase a home for you, and we'll give you 150,000 pound to do whatever you want, start a business and do whatever
Wow.
you want.
And that was back in the
So
80s.
that was in the 80s, yeah. So quite a
Wow.
bit of money, actually.
Quite a bit of money, yeah.
Realistically, probably 750,000 today, U.S. If you were to
Absolutely, yeah. Wow.
account for inflation.
Yep.
Um,
Easy.
yeah. So my
Yep.
parents actually started a coffee and tea company.
Over in
Um,
Ireland, yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. And so
And
your mum was obviously born in Ireland, but your dad, you said he's from Israel. Was he born in Israel then? Yes.
yes,
And
yeah.
he then met your mum in California, and this was brand new for him to go and live in Ireland as well. Then.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Yeah,
And then
well,
they
for him, it was a very strange sort of an evolution because he had was born in Israel, served in Entebbe in 1978. He went to, or 77, went to the Entebbe rescue operation. And then after he left the service, I mean, this is going to be very much like the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. As soon as my
sure.
father was done with his military service and requirements to the country, he packed his shit up and went off to medical school in Milan.
Right.
And he was in medical school for I think 3 or 4 years, and then decided he didn't want to do that. After he was, I think he actually, my understanding is he finished medical school and was about to start his residency and went, no, don't want to do this, which
Oh,
is
okay.
just unbelievable to me. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think he was like 25 or something like that, and he said, no, I'm going to go to America. I think truth is, I don't think, I know. He was following my aunt. My aunt moved to California. She had already moved a few years prior, so he moved in and was able to gain residency and go to university as a resident in a time when going to a university was much cheaper than it
Mm-hmm.
is today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a sort of an interesting place, and I actually had to
And
call
then
just before this. I had to text my mother and say, "Hey, just out of curiosity, which year did we move to America?" And she goes, "93, sweetie, 93." So it was
right.
in
Okay.
1993 they moved to California because they already knew the area. They'd gone to school here, and they were leaving the troubles.
So this is after you'd been in Ireland, and then they went back to California in '93 from the
Yeah,
'80s.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Right, right,
yeah.
interesting. So just to jump out a little bit, is that what was your grandfather like on your dad's side? Was he a bit of a traveller too? Did he used to travel around like your dad seems to have jumped around a bit? And it may, and knowing a little bit about your story, you've travelled to a few countries as well. Was that something that was in the blood there from your grandfather?
My grandfather walked out of Dachau concentration camp with his brother when he was 17. He went to medical school on the German dollar, if you will, on the German
Mm-hmm.
mark, and then after in 1951 moved to Israel. Him and my
Okay.
grandmother traveled a little bit. Like they would go, they'd go on holiday to Europe, primarily to Switzerland, which was always interesting to me. They refused to travel to Germany. They refused to travel to Lithuania or Poland or Austria or any of the countries that they're My grandmother's family was from Lithuania, but they immigrated to get away from the Nazis. They immigrated to Belgium, and my grandfather's family immigrated from Austria to Poland to get away from the Nazis. And in both cases, it didn't do anything because the Nazis invaded those two places. But I think they had a little bit of a resistance to travel outside of they like I say, they traveled on their yearly holiday was to Europe, and it would be 2 or 3 weeks somewhere, and then also they traveled like 2 to 3 weeks of the year. They would come either to Ireland or to the U.S., and they would trade it off. And then when we moved to California, it was just, oh well, we're only going one place because the entire rest of that side of the family for them had moved to California. It was either people who lived in Israel or people who lived in California.
Yep.
Because
and remembering
even
back in the
today,
day
that's where a
too.
lot of the Israeli expats are, or at least permanently living.
Yeah. And remembering back in your grandfather's time too, they wouldn't have done as much traveling as we can today as well. You know, it's a much
No,
more
absolutely not.
easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, sort of from probably your parents' generation onwards, which I think we're about the same age, and our parents are probably about the same age. It was a little bit more viable to do so. So cool. So
Oh, for
you
sure. And
folks,
I just want to say that, like, the first time my mother went to America with her parents when she was a young girl, they went on a ship. The second time when
yeah,
she was a teenager, they flew there on a
right,
Pan American Clipper.
right,
So
yeah,
like it evolved. They came from a generation where my grandfather didn't leave County Londonderry except to go to London a couple of times, and I think he went also to Edinburgh a couple of times. But aside from that, he never even left the county that he lived in,
wow,
let alone the
amazing,
country
yeah,
or the section of the kingdom. Forget that. He never even he. Anytime anybody was like, "Oh, are you coming to America for Christmas?" We'll see about it. Yeah, oh, okay. And then a week prior to, we would all get a notification. Your Aunt Joan has worked it out, or my great Aunt Mary used to be the travel agent, and she would arrange, and we, sure enough, would all be flying Aer Lingus the
that's
week
amazing.
before.
Yep.
No one was coming to us. But he had I mean, honestly, he did have enough money that I never thought of it as, I always thought of our Christmas as family reunions because they were that big and the entire family was
Yeah.
brought together. And as soon as he passed away, they stopped abruptly because the money was no longer paying for those. And people in our family weren't going to be like, okay, we're just going to shell out whatever it was, like 7,500 US per family to fly everyone. No, that's not happening.
Yeah. So, just your parents, when they went to Ireland, you started saying they started a little coffee shop or something?
Oh
Coffee shop,
yeah,
did
so
you start to
they
say? Yep.
started a coffee company.
Okay.
And then, if you remember, it was in 1990. There was an Irish tax law that went into effect that started to kind of welcome a lot of high tech companies into the European fold. It's part of the reason why many of the big tech firms set up operations in Ireland, is because of original tax shelter rules and laws that had been set up.
Right.
And so, but sadly, at the same time, it also impacted the northern county markets. Like the northern county economy was heavily impacted. So my parents decided, basically in '93, that enough was enough. My brother's school had been hit by an RPG from Republicans, and my family's business wasn't doing too hot, so they decided to sell all but 31% of their company, which is known as Costa Coffee, and they
Okay.
moved all their operations to the U.S. And my father is no longer involved in the company. My sisters actually bought him out, but they still own a portion of Costa, and they now almost exclusively provide green coffee to other coffee companies.
Wow.
they're not in the retail game anymore. They don't want to deal with customer service really anymore.
Sure.
They want to deal with 40 or 50 large accounts that order, 20 tons of green coffee per month, or like their biggest customer is Starbucks.
Right. Okay. Wow, that's
Bless you,
amazing.
babe.
So, okay, that's pretty cool to know. I didn't realize it. So when we're drinking a green tea around the world from Starbucks, it's directly from your family.
Well, no. So their tea is, they source their tea from a whole bunch of different houses, and the same is true for their coffee. They source their coffee from two different suppliers. One is my family's company, which is called Inter-American Commodities, and they're a green coffee brokerage house. And then the other is Westpac is the other company that they buy from. And it really has to do with what markets you operate in. So because of, and this is, take it however you want, but this is the reality, because Northern Ireland is connected to the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom used to have a lot of territory. There is, through Commonwealth arrangements, there is a lot more access to certain things, but it's limited to certain places. So, like, for instance, we get coffee from the African continent, from every country that formerly was or is currently a Commonwealth country. So, like Kenya, Uganda, Cameroon, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Tanzania. But we do not buy from Ivory Coast. We do not get from a couple of different places in West Africa. We do not get from Mozambique. We don't get from, because those were Portuguese or French colonies. And then we don't,
Right.
through familial and even through community, we don't have contact. So my mother and my sister's company really specializes in sourcing teas from Sri Lanka, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Nepal, southern China, Taiwan, and Philippines, but not Japan.
Okay.
Japanese teas are a very complicated and very expensive endeavor. And then we also stay away from the coffee that has nothing to do with former English territory.
Sure.
So if it comes from another place, we can't get it for you. You have to go to Westpac to get it, or from another specialty coffee company, which is part of the reason why Starbucks exclusively roasts coffee almost exclusively from the African continent, with the only blends that they put into it are Belize and Guatemala. And that's really only because Belize and Guatemala used to be British territory.
Right. Interesting that. Okay, so so you've started to spend some of your younger years in Ireland, and then how old were you when you went over to America in '94?
8.
8. And what was that transition like for you as an 8-year-old?
I remember being bullied a lot and being called a leprechaun.
Mm-hmm. You would have had an accent too, I suppose, at your age.
Oh yeah,
at that age.
Yeah, yep. I had a pretty thick accent.
Yep.
Or at least that's what I've been told. My mother says, "Oh yeah, you had a lovely accent. It's completely gone." But yeah, no. Actually, my sister Miley and my brother still have it, because they were older. I think they were Miley was 18 already. I think she was 17. I think they did it just before she turned 18, so that she would get citizenship through the package deal, as it were. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, it was quite rough. And I remember also that I had tested, they basically test children to see what their knowledge level is like. And I remember I was in basically my first year in Ireland when we moved, and for second year, I was in my second year, and I was placed into fifth year in America. Mm-hmm. So I was smaller and younger, sounded like a little Irish kid. And the only saving grace that I will say is that my parents moved to Northern California, which has a large UK expat population.
Okay.
They're not in the primary schools, which is a shame, but it is what it is. It took a few years, and by the time I was in high school, I had 3 or 4 other Irish friends that had also moved because of the troubles their family had moved.
Mm-hmm.
So we had like commonality, and then it was always an interesting situation though.
Well, if you're okay to elaborate a little bit on that part right now, because I can tell you that I'm relating as a father for a son that's relocated from Thailand to over here as he was 5, now 6.5, and I can see the struggles that he's had most of all out of our family. So we've got my wife who's Thai, but she seemed to settle in quite well, and my daughter was only young. She was like 9 months when we moved here, so she doesn't know any different. I struggled myself a little bit just from the culture shock back to the Western world. It was
Right.
really
Yeah.
strange. I don't know why. I mean, I just got so accustomed to the Asian life over there, and I really loved it.
It's the amount of
And
convenience in the West. That's what is.
hugely,
It's that
yeah,
it's a shocking thing to go from a place where you have to get up and go and do things. They're available to you, but you must do the legwork to get it done. To
everything.
then move
Yes,
back into a Western place where, quite honestly, things are shoveled to you on a regular basis, and it becomes a bit overwhelming because it's. And I could be totally wrong, but in my experience, it's a culture shock in that your brain thinks like I need to do X amount of steps, and in reality they've either already been done, or you get confused not realizing that it's really just a one step because there's somebody who will do all these things for you, or some type of system that will take over it. I remember the first couple of months were I felt I don't know, I just felt like, wait, am I supposed to go and do this, or is that done for me? Wait a minute, and there was many times that I would go to a place many times, and they were like, "Oh no, you don't need to keep checking. It's done. It's done. It's already, the process has already begun. It's from here on out. It's automated. You don't need to keep worrying about it." And some things were a little difficult for me to,
to
convenience. I really think that
yeah,
that's the major thing, because it boils down to quite literally everything. Even a waiting room in an airport, in a terminal, in the West is a very different experience than waiting in an Asian Eastern airport.
completely. I totally can totally relate to that myself. And
There's a
what I
Louis
found
Vuitton,
myself.
but it stops there.
I found myself as well coming back to this disposable society as well, because over in Thailand, when we had to sell some things off, just our items because we couldn't take them with us, we could sell things right down to the last like dollar or two. People would
Right,
travel to pick up something. My wife was like, 50 baht, and I'm like, just throw it in the bin. But
right,
she's selling it down to that. Over here, we almost didn't have to get anything. There was people just giving things away, throwing good things away like that. We were just so surprised at. I mean, they might go and buy the new $3,000 sofa, and they'll give away their like leather sofa that's several years old, but it's still good. It was still totally
right.
fine. They wouldn't even bother selling it because it just doesn't hold the value because it's such a disposable society.
Yeah,
So it was
and
just
that's
so many
also,
things.
I don't know. I think Australia, I think Australia, because it's such a huge continent, has enough production power and is close enough to Asia that it's not nearly as negatively impacted as like a place like New Zealand, which has a very high import duty on things, in the same way that a
Hmm.
small country like Israel or Cyprus or Greece has a ridiculously high import duty on, well, import goods, whether luxury or otherwise. If it's not
Mm,
locally manufactured, you're going to get hit for it, and it's probably going to be a little painful. However, if it's something for your home, like a television or washer and dryer, or a refrigerator or something like that, you bite the bullet because it's part of the deal. But when it's time to sell, it's not an issue getting rid of it at all.
yeah. Hmm.
I mean, people will travel. I don't have a car. I hired a taxi cab that happens to be a van so that I can move this shit. Let's do it. Like,
Yeah.
but in
Yeah.
this country, or in many other Western countries that have manufacturing capacity, it's become again, it's convenience. Why go and get it? Why go and have to deal with the hassle? Potentially a knob is broken, potentially a wire is frayed, potentially it's scratched, potentially. fuck it, put it in the skip. I'm going to go buy a new one. And I
Mhm.
get free delivery. And you take the
Mhm.
refuse away. Woo!
You did right there.
Convenience.
Absolutely. So just going back to the little 8-year-old Tiger truck. So you've moved over. Did your parents get to discuss it with you, or did they just say we're moving? Because that's kind of what
No,
we did with my kid.
yeah,
I didn't really
we're
walk him
just
through it, and
moving.
I should have. And so you've got no choice in the matter anyway. But there was no sort of preparation, which I didn't do again with my son, and I wish I did. What was it like? You got here. It's kind of a brand new place to you again, because you wouldn't have remembered too much when you were little. Back at school, you started getting picked on. How do you like? What sort of
So that
coping mechanisms did you?
my parents felt that the best thing was to put me in a private school at that point, which kind of was worse because it was a Jewish private school. So I ran into a fair amount of bigotry.
Hmm.
Jews have an internal bigotry towards each other that's not, it's over who, it's kind of like the same, it's sort of the same bigotry that exists between Sunni and Shia, except for it's not all and out volatile and violent, but there's
Hmm.
a definite undercurrent animosity towards between Ashkenazi and Sephardic, between Sephardic and Eastern, like Iraqi, Mizrahi, Eastern Jews, and Moroccan Jews from like Armenian Jews and Levant Jews. Like it's all over the place. Ethiopian Jews? Who's the best at what they're doing, basically, right?
Hmm.
But at
Hmm.
a kid level, kids are fucking cruel.
They are absolutely there.
So
Um,
you take all of the judgment out of the equation, all the social equity that would come into a decision from an adult, whether or not I should open my big yap and say my opinion about the situation. And it would be sometimes, it started with, well, you're not a real Jew because you're an Irish kid, and don't you know that the Irish are Catholics and Protestants fighting for eternal damnation or whatever, and and obviously you left that, so you're part of that group of people, you're not even part of our group of people. And then it was, well, yes, I am, because my mother is Jewish, and it was a lot of back and forth. And then when about the time that I turned, I don't know, 11 or 12, it started to become pretty obvious that I was a gay kid too. So man, just pile it on.
so was this bullying? Did it get physical at times, or was it more name calling and just trying to crush your spirit rather than physical
There was
bullying?
well
Or
there was So there was a lot of name calling and that sort of thing, and where faculty would get in the way and check it, but not really, not dealing with it. Just stop, guys, stop, stop, stop. And then one
Mhm.
day, it evolved to like the most popular kid in the school, this guy who felt very threatened that I had become very close friends with his girlfriend and thought I was cheating, like she was cheating on him with me or something. I don't know, some fucking crazy thing. And then just completely lost his shit that I was gay. And yeah, but put me in the hospital.
Put in the hospital.
Yeah, caught me
Jesus.
outside of a shopping center and put me in the hospital.
Fuck. And
So
how old were you then?
12.
12. All right. So uh, you just mentioned before, when by the time you were 11 or 12, you said it started to become obvious that you're a gay kid. Um, did you realize you were gay younger than that? And
Oh yeah, yeah.
um, you did. So you kind of always knew it. And was it something that it wasn't obvious to younger kids because I guess they don't realize things about sexuality at the younger age, right? But was that what was the stronger battle? Was it about being gay at that time with the kids picking on you, or was it more because of change of country? Or I'm trying to figure out what was the heaviest part for you, or was it all just combined as one?
It was all just combined. Just a monster clusterfuck. No easy
And
way out. And that's the thing is, kids, when they can move from one topic to another to attack you, and they will, but they'll also not forget the one that they moved off from, and they'll continue to use that as part of their arsenal. Like I see kids that are really tormented and bullied, and that it's an evolutionary thing. It started
mm,
and it slowly built. They whether his tormentor, bully, or he or she's tormentor or bully has started in that space, or usually what happens is they started with something, and then over time, because they got under the person's skin, quite honestly, the person may have inadvertently, in the process of it becoming emotional and trying to get the bully away, said something like, you know, get the fuck away from me for whatever blah 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 reason, and disclosed more information, which now furthers the torment, and it evolves into this
Snowballs.
grotesque beast that you really can't easily deal with, at least not without taking both parties aside and putting him into deep therapy. Not separate therapy, deep therapy together, so that at least not the entire time, but so that the tormentor can understand just
what they're causing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And why.
So what was that like
wrong.
for you after school? Like after school, did you had you built friends over the next couple of years that you'd first come back, or did you feel pretty lonely? I mean, was it because you said it was kind of when you hit high school you had another 3 or 4 Irish friends, but for a young kid to be, and I'm a huge advocate against bullying, by the way. Like I can't stand it. Someone bullied my kid at school, and I actually had to go at the kid. And another kid had bullied my kid a little bit, and I spoke to the parents, and we actually all got together with that kid and the other couple of kids. Now they're all buddies and they hang out. So we're trying to deal with it in those different ways, which they didn't deal with when we were kids, right? It was different. It was just really different.
Well, and that's exactly my point, right? So the parents or faculty used to separate the two parties and just wag their finger and say no, no, no. Whereas if you say no, 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 but then pull the two parties aside, isolate them from the situation so there's no longer an audience, and actually get them to sit down and discuss, this is where this is who I am. These are my differences. What are your differences? Because I'm quite sure we're not that different, and there's really no reason for all of this. And if you were on the receiving end of this, you really would not be particularly ecstatic about it either. So,
fast forwarding right to the day where I speak to you, you're like, I'm gonna give you some compliments here. Like just listening to your talks, then getting to speak to you last week. You're highly intelligent. I really feel like I connect with you, man. And you're easy to talk to. You seem extremely confident, and you seem extremely successful. So going back to again when you were a child and this was happening, what was your mental health like going from a kid to your teens with this bullying? Because it sounds like it was probably quite a frequent thing at that time.
I think more or less it was the major driving factor for me to get a first degree and get the hell away from what I at that time perceived was a systemic social inequity. And it didn't matter where I went. The truth of the matter is, if you're in California, Northern California, one of the most metropolitan places in the United States, surrounded by Asian populations, Indian populations, Israeli populations, African American populations, European expat, American, Caucasian population, this huge melting pot of people. And there's still this going on. What is the flyover part of America like? What's the middle bit like? And really, do I ever want to discover that? No, I don't think so. So for me, it was graduation from high school at 16, 2.5 years at UCD, University of California, Davis, got a fine arts degree, got the hell out of Dodge, quite literally. Got the very first job I could, working for Thomson Reuters, and moved.
To where?
I moved to Jerusalem.
Okay, so so it was kind of good that you turned that into a positive. Some people don't, right? So you've turned it to a positive. Focus, get the hell, let's bounce out of here. And that's what you did, right?
I looked at what I would have to do to be able to be successful in another country. And regardless of the fact that my father was from Israel and then I could move back to Ireland or the United Kingdom or Israel, I just looked at where job saturation was a problem. And at the time in the UK, there were not a lot of jobs for anybody. But particularly in the journalist and artsy filmmaking space, because that's really what my degree is about, and that's what I was doing, is video and photojournalism. The best opportunities were in the Middle East and on the African continent and on the sub-Asian Indian area of the continent. Kind of constantly journalists who work around Kashmir or work in around Goa, work around where there's like religious strife, where there's constantly something going on. But in all of those situations, you have to have a first degree, a bachelor's.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot get away with just knowledge or a certificate or a 2-year vocational degree program, which in America they like to trump it up as a university degree, but it's not, and it is worthless outside of the US. And that was, for me, that was the major motivator, was I have to get this degree so that I can get a job anywhere else, and I will probably not get paid uber well, but wherever I go, I'll be able to make at least a middle class income because of this degree. And the fact that it's a U.S. school, state school, carries more weight, honestly. U.S. education might be expensive, but it is also notorious for being quite good.
So, what was the particular field you wanted to focus on with going through to university to get out of the country? It was journalism?
Well, I originally was going to do filmmaking, but journalism was where there was more, and even today, I mean, there's more opportunity in telling a story that's factual versus telling a story that's fictional. If you're a documentary filmmaker, you probably are also working as a journalist or have in the past. And there's a pretty good crossover there, or like an overlap.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was, it's interesting because I more or less, that's what I went and did for 3.5 years, was I made film montages. And it's kind of crazy because that's what it was. It was like, you watch like Sky News and they play like a 45-second video montage of like the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and you see all these different video elements that are all clipped together with some text and some things overlapped on it.
Yep.
I would do those for Reuters, and then Reuters would distribute them. So they go to the Guardian Network, they would go to Sky, they go to RTL, they go to ProSiebenSat, they go to ABC, Australian broadcasting, as well as American broadcasting. And I would just, I'd see these videos everywhere, and I'd be like, that's funny because that's my work. And then, yeah, well, so I did that for 3.5 years, but I didn't do it for Reuters for 3.5 years. I only worked for Reuters for 2 years, and then I worked for the Israeli government for 1.5 years, doing the exact same thing.
Okay. So this was, how old were you when then you went from the US to Israel to start working in that field?
19.
19. Pretty young to
Pretty
be
young.
out there
Very,
in these places,
Yeah.
and you left all family members behind. I imagine you would have had some family members in Israel from your dad's side. Yep.
Yep.
And what's the experience like now at 19, changing countries over to Israel? I imagine you probably visited there along the way as well.
I did.
Holidays.
Yeah.
Yep. So some familiarity. Yep.
And
now you're
and some basic language skills as well, like ability to carry a conversation in Hebrew, but not go into a court of law by any measure, not be able to, go to medical school or anything like that, but surely be able to go to a restaurant, order, get your bill, get directions to go places, basic conversational. I probably arrived in the country with a basic grammatical understanding of the language and like a 12 to 13-year-old's level of the language.
Okay.
Which definitely is not bad. Spoken.
I mean,
quite clearly
definitely spoken.
But not quite business level yet.
Yep, sure. And so you spent 3.5 years in Israel, or just with doing that job with these two different companies? Did you spend longer in?
Well, I spent I spent a total of 5 years there.
Not
10. Concurrently. So
okay.
part of it was like a about 4.25 years, and then after I was working for the state of Israel, I got a sort of. It's kind of strange when you get into a level where you're working for a government or working in that level, you become very fluid in the job, if that makes any sense. I was
Mm-hmm.
I officially stopped working for the government of Israel and started working for Tony Blair's office and the special envoy to the Middle East,
Oh wow.
but it wasn't, there was no change to anything. My security clearance stayed exactly the same. I didn't have to go get a new security clearance. I packed everything up in a box and went to, in the same building, moved one floor up.
Oh wow. Okay.
It was, yeah, like everything was pretty much, yeah, because the special envoy has to be in the same government complex
Right.
for various reasons. But it was just sort of an immediate lateral transfer, and then Tony Blair decided to, for I don't know why, but he decided to move his offices to Zurich in Switzerland.
Yep.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I was there for 11 months, and then I stopped working for him, and I went back to working in Israel for a private petrochemical firm called Noble
Okay.
Energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I only worked for them for about 3.5 months before I took a transfer to the American market, supposedly with the Gannett News Company, but it all totally fell on its face, and I decided to use the time to go to school again and get a different degree.
Back in the US.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what sort of time frame were we looking for all those transitions? I know you said the time's 11 months here, and 4.25 months there, 4.25 years there. How old were you when you went back to the US? Then you were like what, 25, 26?
20, yes, 27, I think, because it's 2013 ish. Yeah,
Yep.
2013, and then the end of 2015 or the middle of 2015, I started working for Brochart Engineering, which is a firm that's contracted directly to Disney and a couple of other people.
Okay. That's cool.
And I worked for them for about a year, and then I decided that they're a bunch of assholes, and
Okay.
because they really are. And I went, and now I basically work for myself, and I do my own films, and I do my own engineering, and I do my own all sorts of things.
Sounds excellent because you can easily tell that you're of high intelligence. So those few industries that you just said then don't surprise me at all. But now tell me, and I don't know if you're comfortable to go into it. I think you would be. You're a pretty open guy, and just about being a gay man from transitioning from country to country like this, what it was like as someone who's gay. Um, could it be publicly displayed in places like Israel and things like that? And was there a
So
problem with that?
the main reason I moved to Israel actually was the fact that being gay in Israel was a celebrated affair, is a
Okay.
celebrated affair.
Mm-hmm.
The city of Tel Aviv puts on Pride yearly, but for them, it's a 1 week event. It starts on a Thursday and it ends on a Thursday. And the the city pays for the entirety of it. They actually have a beach that is not exclusive to LGBT, but it is operated by the city's LGBT center, um, like community center,
Mm-hmm.
and they have yeah, they've got a really nice little clinic on the beach. They have a lovely cafe grill place and a couple of bars and a couple of little ice cream shops and whatnot. And it's known as Pride Beach. And it's
Right.
primarily a bunch of gay people, but everyone's welcome. No one's going to turn you away. And many
Mm-hmm.
people, the the
Go down to
the
celebrate.
thing that yeah, but everyone just kind of hangs out. The thing that I really thought was kind of amazing is, unlike a lot of other cities where there's a gay district that has a whole patchwork of gay bars, um, Tel Aviv doesn't really have that. Tel Aviv has one tiny street that has 2 or 3 gay bars on it that are pretty well known to the city, and the rest of the gay bars are just smattered around town.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone goes to them. No one, and gays, straights, everybody goes to them. No one gives a shit. I mean, there's this really cool gay bar called Evita that has this beautiful outdoor patio area, and on a Saturday afternoon or Saturday noontime, you'll see people there with families. Long before gay adoption was a thing, there were families and gay people just hanging out. Like it was just this very, very different dichotomy to the United States.
Yep, and it sounds like a lovely place to be honest, that people can mingle like that, whereas other places it's like it's frowned. It used to be frowned upon back then more so, right? It's like, oh, you can't be
Right.
gay in
Oh, yeah.
public, like, and it's like it sounds like you've got this wonderful place to freely express yourself, man. And it's like
Yeah,
don't have
well,
to
I
worry
remember
about some of the bullshit that goes on.
I remember coming out to my nan by telling her, like, this is my boyfriend, and she was really sweet about it, and then she took me into the kitchen and she was like, so is he a doctor? Like, the question was like just as if any other, like, it was like, so is he a doctor or a lawyer or something like that? And she was happy.
Pick a good
great
one,
that
honey.
I had told her something, but that was the least on her mind at that moment in time.
Yeah.
And it was just
Great.
like, this is amazing. Yeah. And most of her, I remember afterwards, I kind of had to tell her to chill out. She was too much of a super nan about it, because like her bridge group, I would go and take her to her bridge group, and all the bridge ladies would be like, oh, how is your boyfriend? How is that going? Are you guys going to do it? And it's like, wow, okay, I don't really even know you ladies. And
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. You're going to sit here, play bridge for the next 9 hours or whatever. What else are you going to talk about your fucking grandchildren? Obviously. Just a little jeering slightly,
So how old were you when you came out, and what was that like to, let's say, some of your family members, your mum, your dad, your grandparents, if you're close to them? So what was that whole process like?
So my parents were about 14 or 15 years of age, and actually my dad came out to me that I was gay.
Okay, so he came up to you and he sat you down to talk about it?
Yeah, he said, I don't, something like, I think he said something like, I have no judgment for you in any way. I love you regardless. You have a few gay people in your family. We love them. We accept them. They're wholehearted members of our family. There's no judgment. And we will come to their defense with guns and cut a bitch. I mean, the cut a bitch part was that I just added, but something along those lines. And I was like, okay. And he said, so if you have a boyfriend, which I believe you do, he's welcome to come over here. And it became very sweet. It was very, comforting, compassionate, really nice. And then the very next day, my mother was at home, and I walked in the door from school. She was sitting there at the dining room table, and my heart sank, because I was like, well, I haven't told her yet, but I'm sure my dad did. And I started coming up to the table, and I said, so I have something to tell you. And I mean, I guess I should have told you at the same time I told Dad, or that I had the discussion with Dad. And she goes, oh, sweetie, this is not about you being gay. I've known that since you were about 4 years of age. This is not that. I'm fine with that. I love you. That's great. This is about what I found in your drawer. What is this? And I looked down at it, and it was a pile of some really funky marijuana from somewhere. And she goes, you cannot smoke this. This stuff is horrible for you. You don't know where it came from. You don't know what it's been sprayed with. You don't know what it's made with. She grabbed me by the hand, grabbed the little bag, went to the powder room, tossed the bag of stuff into the toilet. I watched it get flushed down. My heart sank even more. She then walked back out to the dining table, sat me back down, walked over to the pantry, grabbed a jar, came back, sat it on the counter, and said, look, I grow my own. If you need flour, you just go and get some from the jar. I don't want you selling it to your friends, but if you need a safe place to smoke, you can do that right here on the back patio. And I know for a fact exactly what's in this, because I grew it, and it has nothing that potentially could kill you or make you stupid. Do not ever buy street drugs ever again. So that was my both coming out / your mother does not want you smoking bad pot talk, which I
Now, I
completely
was going to
believed
cut
was
in
going to
there,
go
man.
sideways entirely and go, you can't smoke pot. But
Your parents rock. Your parents are awesome, man. I can see now the positivity why from having a tough time as a kid. I'm thinking like, what drove this guy to be so like successful and positive, and he's out there, just look, you seem like such a fantastic guy, man. That I'm sure you may or may not have, little demons from those times as kids. We all do for something, but it just doesn't seem like it. Talking to you, you're just a happy-go-lucky person, right? Now, your parents are awesome people, man. They made you feel super comfortable for that. Your mum's even like, here's the good pot, forget the bad pot,
well, she
and it's
did,
like,
and I but also from the age of, I think, 9 years or thereabouts, myself, my two sisters, and my brother, everyone in the family, and even the half siblings have all basically been brought up the same way. From about 9 years of age, we were all given alcohol as well.
okay,
I had a very clear and fervent, intimate understanding of what my alcoholic limit was when I was 18 years of age and legally allowed to drink in Israel. I knew exactly where it needed to be cut off. I have
yeah,
not once ever in my life ever gotten to blackout drunk. I've never gotten to alcohol intoxication where it's beyond my limit. I've never been hospitalized for it. I've never had those issues because I learned from a very early age what where my responsibilities are and how much I need to respect it. In the same way that you can say that I grew up with a mother who also, she was very much into pot and not taking pharmaceuticals. She still doesn't take pharmaceuticals, except for one. She takes one now that's a neurological that stops her migraines. But and the only reason why she says she takes it, she's like, this shit is like a fucking miracle. But everything else, no. And even then, the migraine med, she told me she only takes it like 3 or 4 times a year, and she gets migraines regularly. She just hates taking stuff like that. So, I think that's where my respect for it comes from too. Don't get me wrong, I love a good pint and a whiskey. Oof. Good. Oh,
yeah,
like
me
a
also. I've gone off it these days a bit more,
cream
but
ale and an Irish whiskey. Oof, fuck me
I like,
running.
yeah, I like a good Guinness, man. I really, really do. So just knowing you got the Irish blood there, man. I've got to have that Guinness with you when I next see you. But okay, so like, just your parents are commendable, man. Just a profound respect for them, how they've handled that. It's something that I'm also trying to learn as a father, how to approach my kid with just certain situations. My parents were strict. My dad's particularly Italian. I mean, he's dead against drugs, this, that, and the other. He's like, no motorbikes or I'll break both your legs, no earrings or I'll bite it off with your teeth, my teeth, and things like that, and he
What
wants to,
about
if you get it.
Vespa? What about
he,
Piaggio? Piaggio? Come on.
I bought a motorbike one home when I was still living at home when I was young. I bought a motorbike when I had my license home, and I was moving out in about a month because I just bought my first house, and he said, you ride that, I'll break both of your legs. I said, well, I'll just wait a month until I move out then, because he couldn't do anything about it, right? But he wouldn't really break my legs. It was just that Italian threat, right? So he's like, if you ever get tattoos, I'll skin you alive. Here I am, I'm covered. The top half of my body's covered in tattoos. It's almost like he's trying to push it against me in a way, and I just want to do it because I want to experience. But your parents are like kind of drip feeding you with these things to allow you to try it and experiment, to know that when you're at that legal age to go out and do it, that you're not binging on it and destroying yourself publicly, and it's not safe. So I kind of have seen
I
that
mean,
method.
I've had the discussion. Well, I've had the discussion with my parents. I remember one of the very famous ones was because I remember asking my mom, like, none of my friends' parents do this, and many of my friends' parents think you're quite psycho for doing it. And she would say, well, here's the truth. I'm not going to be around forever. I'm not going to be able to watch out for you forever. You're a kid now, and I'm your guardian now, so I can tell you what is safe and what is unsafe. But if you don't learn these lessons now, when you leave, when you go off to university, what says you're not going to get into horrible trouble, and I will be nowhere near you to help. Nor will anybody else really close to you. You may have some friends, but what's going to happen if everything goes tits up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what, if for nothing else, I'm giving you some basic, really basic common sense, that's sort of self-taught common self-soothed common sense, where your
But
mom's
under her
around to
care.
support you.
That's
Yeah,
right.
she's there
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
support you so you don't
Mm-hmm.
fall, but you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna feel it. So that if ever you run near to that, too close to the flame again, you can feel the heat when it's time to get the fuck away.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Because that's
I
a
love
problem that I
that.
see, is a lot of kids do not learn that. They go off to university, regardless of the age, regardless of where they came from, and they were not taught those things. So when those warning flags start popping up, they don't know that they're warning flags.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right. The parenting method that your folks had is just fantastic. I'm a little bit old school because it's kind of ingrained in me. You know, you can't help those things with the way that your parents are. Sometimes just you grow up to be that apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. But then there's this like a bit more of a new way of parenting, and I kind of want my son to be. I want to be his father and best friend at the same time. It's like I'm your father. I'll still discipline you if I have to, but talk to me about it openly. We can work through this, and just be honest with me.
Right.
I
Yeah, you
I
don't need to
hate
hide it from
lies.
me.
Yeah, don't like he doesn't have to hide anything from me, and that's the kind of
I don't have to be
approach I'm
your
trying to do.
best mate, but I should be at
Yes,
least your mate that you can come and talk to if you need
yeah,
to.
spot on.
But you
That's exactly right.
probably will need to find a best, because there's some things you do not want to talk to me about, and quite honestly, I don't want you to talk to me about.
Right now he's open book, but I can just notice some shyness coming along. You know, I notice he's 6.5. You can start to see some little sexual things going with them. You know, he's curious.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and so I'm trying to just talk to him about his body parts openly, so he's not feeling any sexual shame when he gets to that, teenage years, and he can't talk to me about anything. Right now we can sort of openly talk about it, what's normal, not normal, and what you can and can't do. So that's very different to how I was raised, though. I was raised completely different to that. It's like I love my mum to death. I tell her on very special occasions that I love her, but it's very odd for me to just ring her up and go, "Love you, mum." It's weird for some reason, or to just go up and hug her. It's not what we've done, but we definitely will on her birthday and Christmas, and she knows it, and she wouldn't do it to us. It's just I don't know what it was. It was just she was like a really fantastic mother, always there for us as kids, but the affection part was more with my younger siblings than myself, as the older ones. But anyway, to carry on with that, so your parents are fantastic. I'm going to say that again. What was it like with your grandparents? Because they're an older generation now, but you have mentioned that there were some gay people in your family, right? So it was probably
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit dealt with and accepted already. So it probably wasn't such a huge shock or anything different again,
Well,
or what was that like?
so my grandparents on my mother's side of the family are very traditional Catholic, but not Catholic, rather Protestant, Irish folk, but they're really traditional.
Mm-hmm.
So I never came out to them. My uncle did. He came out to his
On your
mother,
mum's
and on my
side?
mom's side,
Yep.
and my nan basically shunned him for 11 years.
Right.
So, long story short, my cousins did not tell her.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell her.
Mm-hmm.
No one was going to say anything to Grandpa Kane. That was not happening.
Okay.
Yeah, like the last memory I have of her is going to visit around Christmas time and her dragging everybody to midnight fucking mass.
Mm. That's just a very old
She
school
was
thing, right?
91 when that happened. This was
Yeah.
just like 6 years ago. She was
Okay.
91. She dragged everyone there. Then afterwards, she demanded that everybody come to the house. So it's like 1 a.m. in the morning, or 1:30. And keep in mind, this is in Derry, so Christmas Mass, everybody is out walking around at that time. There's very little road traffic, but there's a lot of people out walking.
Yep.
And oh God, I just remember we used to make a joke in the family that if it wasn't for the liter of Beefeater every day, she would die, because it was more or less either formaldehyde for her and keeping her pickled and fermented in the state that she was in, or it was more or less like a rocket fuel for her to keep everything running, because she quite literally consumed a liter of gin every single day.
Wow.
And she had been since she was in her late 50s, since she retired.
Okay.
So she really, really heavy drinker. And she, you know, her favorite thing to do was to get away from the other parishioners and the other people at the church so that she could rail on her family, particularly when she was drunk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She was a really lovely, lovely cunty woman. And I can say that because she was my family.
Yeah.
She was
So were you
kind when
close
she
to her?
needed to be, and most of the time she was an awful woman to people.
Right.
When I was younger, yes, but as I got
Mm-hmm.
older, she didn't get along with anybody past 15 or 16 years of age. None of her
Mm-hmm.
grandkids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We all, at a certain point, we all felt like she was too stodgy, and she felt like we were too wildly out of touch with reality.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And your grandfather on that
fun
side
one.
were you close to?
I was, but there was some, just some things that nobody talked about,
Sure.
like sexuality, or like he didn't even want to know what was going on internally with like family marriages. Like when my aunt and uncle went through a divorce, he didn't care. He didn't want to know. He paid for the attorneys. He told the attorney, I think one time he instructed the attorneys to ensure that she got everything she was owed, and that he didn't make out with a one pence out of place.
Mm-hmm.
And but other than that, he didn't care. He didn't want to know anything about it. Wasn't interested. But if it was about trains or engineering, oh yes, the man would give you all the time of the day. He paid.
Right.
I remember when I was 13 or something like that. I remember telling him like I was very interested in steam trains and locomotives, and so for an entire summer he came to America, not for a family not for a family thing. He came to America to take myself and my cousin to like 7 or 8 heritage railways in North America over the summer,
Mm-hmm.
like one after another, bing 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 bing. And I think 2 of them he actually had an investment in, because we went like to the steam shops early in the morning to see the locomotives get fired up, and we got to like ride in the cabs and do things that were not normal. I remember I reflect now back on it as an adult, and I'm like, oh, I remember doing this. That was so cool. And I even just a couple of years ago, I remember my husband and I went up to Santa Cruz in Northern California, and there's a railroad up there that we rode on. And I remember calling them up and saying, hey, how do I get a cab ride? And they said, yeah, we don't do that. I went, yeah, but I did that when I was a kid. And they're like, yeah, no, we've never done that. And I'm like, well, I can tell you, I have pictures. And they said, okay, well then the only way that would have happened is if you knew one of the owners, and it was an owner related sort of a thing. That's the only way that can happen. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then I'm not about to go, oh, hey, is my grandfather part of your, was he ever an owner or whatever? But it just was sort of like very interesting, because I remember that, and I have pictures of that, and they swear up and down they've never ever allowed that it would be against insurance, and it would be too much of a problem to allow the general public, and that would never happen. Well, it happened.
Yeah, right.
So if it was engineering and that kind of thing, he was all for it. And I do actually remember when I was working for the Mouse, I remember one of my bosses, who was an elderly man at that point and was about to retire, but he had been working for the company since Walt was around. And like it sort of just came back full circle. I didn't know this stuff until I went to go work for them, but it turns out that my grandfather and Walt and a couple other people helped save that railroad and a couple of other heritage railroads in America in the 60s and 70s, that they were train buddies, that they used to own equipment together, and they had pictures together. And then when that sort of came to light, it came to light while I was at work, actually, because I was talking to my boss about it, and he was like, "Oh, I know what you're talking about," and he went and showed me a bunch of pictures, and then I pulled up pictures on my phone on my Facebook, and I was like, "Oh my God, they're the same pictures," and it led to a promotion.
Well, that's a good way to get it, I guess. Yeah.
And then I left the company shortly afterwards because I realized that the promotion was probably because of that and not because of my skill set, and they were demanding things of me that I just didn't have skills for.
Right.
And then I felt like I was kind of stuck in a situation. But
yeah,
I mean,
sure.
It all worked out for the best. I can say now in hindsight, I left without any bad publicity within the company, and a lot of the people within engineering know that I have familial ties to Walt's old men, which is very cool, because if I come in there and I ask for something or advice from those guys now, I don't get the cold shoulder. People give me time of day, which is really kind. And I do believe that has more to do with my familial ties to the company than it does at all to whatever skill set I shared with them over a couple of years of being employed by them. Because they've got thousands of engineers. They've got, hundreds of thousands of employees, millions of employees, actually. Now, they don't, the last thing they need is one singular, solitary, Irish kid, that Irish engineer. The only reason I think they were giving me any love was because of a familial tie.
Right. Okay.
Because I didn't ask for the promotion, and it was a promotion into a middle management of a department that I didn't have an association with. So it was it's kind of
so it was
sideways,
strange.
Sideways promotion, and very strange. It was like, oh, I don't mind the extra money, but it's not really my thing, and I didn't actually ask for this. Why am I here? And why are you guys giving so much extra shit? And then if I don't do it, then I feel like I'm not holding up my side of the bar. Can I go back to my old job? Oh, that's been replaced now? Okay. Can I do an outside contracting gig or something? And that's basically where we are now. I do an outside contracting gig for different projects. Works out well. People respect me. I respect them. And I don't have to take on liability and responsibility for shit that I really don't know much about. Like I don't have an MBA, and they wanted me to manage a large team of like 140 people, and I had come from a department where I managed 2 people. I don't know.
People skills are good, right?
Yeah, but I'm not a social worker. Like that takes a skill set to know how to manage that many people.
Yeah, that's a big crew of people for sure. I've managed
a lot of interpersonal bullshit you got to deal with, plus time frames and workloads and workflow rates and
it's not even about the job anymore. It's about the people. Your job is solely to make those people feel happy, and then they'll do their fucking work. Because otherwise, how do you control that many people? You can't. You just got to be. You've got to be the problem solver for their life.
Right, and whatever creative thing you were doing, you're not doing that anymore. You're now managing creative people who do that, and you have a little bit of input, but not really like you once did. They don't hand you a loose script and say, this is roughly what we want, now run with it. They don't hand you, or a loose brief and say, this is what we're after. Give us some sort of plans or something in response to whatever your mind can concoct. Instead, it's, this is what we need. Now delegate this to your staff and get back to us in 6 months when you have some answers. And that's just like, not what I wanted to do. Not what I was hired to do. And then I even remember somebody saying to me, like, well, you're very lucky because they've done it before, but they don't usually hire people into middle management who've only been in, lower level employment for a couple of years. You usually have to be here for 10 years before that happens. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the same guy also talked shit to me when he heard that I took a contract position, because he was like, you did what? You had it made. And it's like, okay, you don't know shit then.
Yeah.
It's always, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence.
Absolutely is, yeah. Sometimes it's just easier to water your own lawn instead of the lawn on the other side. All right, so just going back to, as we're getting towards the current day of your life, but just going back a little bit on so going to your love life, right? So you had your first boyfriend at did you say 16 or
Yeah,
not?
16.
Okay. And you know, this was someone that you stayed with for a while, or was it a short-term
Um,
thing? Was he your
it was a
first
high
love?
school. It was a high school thing. It was.
Okay.
He was not. Um,
How about your first
yeah.
love?
First love was in Israel. It
In Israel.
was. He was the son of the UK ambassador to Israel.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And you were with him for a while?
Yeah, about 2 years.
Okay. And so he's your first love. I imagine he'd be your first heartbreak as well then.
Yeah.
Yeah. One that we always remember, I'm sure. I've got my own that I do
Yeah.
remember. But and did you get to have many long-term relationships from then until, did you just say you were married just before?
Oh, I am. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So did you have many relationships between that period?
Oh, yeah. Had a few.
Yep.
They were,
Yep.
like everybody else's relationships.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Good, bad, ugly. You learn some things. Actually, you learn a lot.
You learn a lot.
Each one is a learning
Yeah,
mechanism,
absolutely.
except for sometimes you learn new things, and sometimes it's reaffirming shit you already knew, and you're like, oh, now I know what to look for, so that doesn't happen again.
Correct. Correct. And I think that's why a lot of people's high school sweethearts don't tend to last long term, because it's one of your first fresh relationships, and you might love wholeheartedly, but
Sure,
you also make
but
all those mistakes, and some of them are a little bit irreversible, and so
right.
next time that you wouldn't do that again. So you try it again, but maybe you love it a different way. Each relationship is a very different type of
Well,
love. They're
and
not all just the same.
for me, I think the biggest. I mean, yeah, it's obviously it's the other person as well, and their interests and their disinterest, the things that irritate them and everything else. But a lot of what I learned over time is it just boils down to mechanics.
In what
The
way?
mechanics of like communicating, understanding how much the person likes communication or dislikes communication. Because some people feel that too much communication is clingy.
I think communication is one of the most important factors. Maybe too much affection could be clingy, but not communication, in my opinion. So I think it depends on that person too. My wife is from Thailand, and so our communication is difficult. And in hindsight, we're still together, and we still love each other. But we do have those miscommunications often about the simplest of things. She doesn't understand me of the simplest of things sometimes, and vice versa with me, and that causes a problem. In hindsight, I'd probably have not gone down that track, but you can't help who you love sometimes, right? So, if you don't communicate, it just causes problems, man. I think so.
Well, like
You're absolutely right.
I like a lot of communication, but I've dated people who wanted a fair amount of independence. They
Hmm.
wanted to feel like when they reached out or when we were, like we communicated regularly, but when we were um, planning on seeing each other, we were around each other, and the rest of the time we were independent for the most part,
Hmm.
exclusively of each other. And that kind of, for me, that's a little too extreme. But some
Hmm.
people really like that, and they have that also in their, like, they've built that into their romantic life where they have somebody like that who's similar in that they live in the same home, they wake up every morning, they do their thing, but they basically wake up and they do their own thing. They're independent of each other even though they're together.
So,
Like they live
would this be
a
more of a common thing?
semi-independent life.
Would this be more of a common thing in gay relationships, right? Because you've got um, two men that have
Well,
kind of
actually,
gone about their independent life, and it doesn't. Not saying it doesn't happen the other way too, but tend to be most.
I'm thinking about my sister and her husband. Actually, they
Okay,
have
there you go.
kids.
Yeah, yeah,
They have
okay.
kids, so their home life is is very much combined and connected. But he's a teacher and she owns a coffee company. So when they
Mhm,
split, like when they come home, they don't touch. They don't really talk about what they do at work. They talk about their
mhm,
kids. They have that shared family at home, and he
mhm.
has his life at school, and she has her life at the corporate office. And they mix all that much. They try and keep those things separate, And maybe it's just makes it easier for them. They don't, she doesn't have to worry about any of the things that he might be stressing about and vice versa. But at the same time, I feel like that's a crappy place to be in a relationship, because isn't the other person supposed to be there to at least, even if they can't help you with your stresses, are you not supposed to at least be able to express your stresses to them and share them so you can get it off your chest and move on or work through them? I mean, I don't know. But you know what? That's what the kind of person that Rachel and her husband Carson are. They're just singular, solitary beings that share a house and a life and kids and a home life they share. But their corporate professional lives are very, very separate. Like he on checks and things, they have a hyphenated last name, but when he goes out and does lectures and things, it's Carson Metzger, Dr. Metzger.
Mm-hmm.
And and he doesn't, like, I don't know, it's just a very strange, I don't know, people are weird. I can't roll that way. If I'm out and about and I'm leaving the park coming back home, I'll text my husband, okay, I'm leaving Anaheim coming home. Is there anything you need? Or I'm on my way, love you, whatever, just as like update, because I think communication is important. If something happens, he knows where I am.
Exactly. And so I'm probably a little bit more relatable to your sister and her husband right now, because my wife being from Thailand, they're really quite stoic in their approach. They're not that affectionate. Not everyone, we're tarnishing everyone with the same brush here, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say in general, they're
culturally,
they really
culturally,
yes, exactly. Culturally, they are like that. They if there's a breakup,
some are more, but by and large, you're saying that culturally they tend to be stoic people.
Yeah, I really will say that. When I witnessed over there so many times, a husband and wife, and they'll just break up one day, and that's it. Never call. They just go on about their day, and it's like they don't even seem upset, or they're maybe a little bit down for a day, and then they're just back at it. And I witness this over and over, and they'll do that with so many things. To the point where, you start to question yourself in the Western world. Over here, a lot of women, they'll go, "Oh my God," when they make this big deal when some fucking little bullshit thing happens, right?
Dramatic explosion over spilled milk.
Exactly. And I thought that this was kind of it was just the norm before. But when then you live over there and you see that they don't flinch at spilt milk at all, right?
Right.
That you turn around and come back, and I think, fuck, you're just all a bunch of drama queens. Just stop. Stop just making a big deal out of nothing. And even to the part where they have to accentuate and dress themselves up like this magnificent big bullshit thing. I'm like, I just got a little bit more humbled when I was over there, and I guess it made me more stoic myself in certain aspects, or harden up a little bit more too. Now, had I not probably had the experience over there, and probably adapted a part of that culture as well a little bit. I don't know how well my wife and myself would be right now, because I would probably to her seem too over dramatic as well, and she would seem way too stoic. At least I have an understanding for why she is the way she is, but she makes up for it in other areas too. So she might be stoic when it comes to affection, or like verbal cues of affection. But as for taking care of the family, making sure our kids have got everything, like, they're never hungry, and they're always got clean clothes, and she's like, she waits on us in that respect.
Right.
That's her way of showing that she cares. She doesn't care about gifts or giving. Like, so I don't. We know I think I've gotten her a present like once or twice. I've never gotten her a rose. Nothing like that. It sounds horrible, right? But that means nothing to her, as it does to me. It doesn't mean anything. But for her, meaning something important is that I'll get up and help her, assist with something. Like, to feel like I'm there helping her is a huge thing for her. For me, it's a bit more about affection and the verbal cues. But I understand that there's people understand these love languages in different ways, so I'm not taking it to heart that way. I just know that that's how her expression is. But it does make you sometimes feel a little bit empty in certain ways. But at least I understand is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, so we got onto that track from Love Life, from your love lives, right? Yeah, and from your husband, that's right. From high communication, correct? Yeah. So we all learn these things along the way. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about how you said that you know, like they're kind of a stoic people. Because I'm thinking about it, and I think anybody in the last anybody from any country, particularly in the last 100 years, as you know, consumerism and all the modern conveniences have come about. There's that damn word again, convenience. As all those things have come about, the places where people have had internal strife for long bouts of time, whether it's under a military junta or they're constantly having civil war with you know, fractured, like in Colombia, people with the FARC, or Israelis and Palestinians that are constantly infighting, or you know, or like people in Kashmir. There's like, if you ask those people, firstly, if it's a wedding or a family celebration, something like that, they get decked up, no problem, doing the most and having the greatest time. But 90% of their worrying about shit is, I have survived another day, and all the other crap is quite literally bupkis. It doesn't really mean shit. Yeah, great, it's cool. Not saying I'm, you know, negative or want to put down people who are celebrating or whatever, but from my point of view, there's no reason to get so bent out of shape over something like this. Like, there's far worse things that you would have to deal with potentially, like artillery raining down on your you know, on a bus station in Kashmir, or from Pakistan, or a suicide bomber going off near Gaza, or bombs going off in, you know, wherever. You know, take your pick. People from war torn or formerly strife areas, even like somebody today living in modern Kenya will tell you that there's not so many things to worry about, because just a few years ago, many people were running for their lives. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, most of this shit, there's no point in stressing over, really.
Yep.
You're
I'd
wasting your
like to
energy.
adopt that train of thought, you know, because here's a typical example from the differences from just myself and my wife, right? When I was living in Thailand, I've said this on here before, Scooby-Doo came on as a cartoon. My son was a baby, and it's Scooby-Doo in Thai, right? I'm like, oh, Scooby-Doo. And I was watching it, I'm trying to understand it in Thai, and so I said to my wife, far out, I said, did you used to watch this as a kid as well, you know? Because obviously it was an old cartoon played on, you know, modern day. She shakes her head, and I'm like, what? She goes, she was like a little bit angry at me. What are you angry about? They didn't even have TV when they were young, let alone watching cartoons. They were raised in like a wooden, like it's like almost like a wooden treehouse shack. It's like on stilts because of the high flood rain sometimes, and
Yeah, right,
you know, you've
right.
got wooden
In the
stairs
wet
going up. It's
season. Yeah.
exactly, it's one big room. It's not even huge. It's just one big room
Right.
where
And
everyone
they
would
sleep
sleep
on
in,
mats.
hang out in. Exactly, sleep on mats on the floor with a pillow.
Yep.
There was no running
Yep.
water, and she had to work when she was young, and
Unless it was running under the house.
exactly, spot on. You know, to go to the toilet, they had to go outside to buckets, and they had to
Right.
shower by, like, you know, scooping water in tubs, and you know, and throwing it on themselves. That's the lifestyle, but you just quickly you quickly forget about that, right? And you just assume that did you watch Scooby Doo when you were a kid? It's
Right.
almost like offensive, and these are reasons why they're stoic, because they were raised in hardships and had to work young and worry
Right.
about where money was coming from. It's like, I haven't got time to worry about your fucking iPad or
Right.
cartoons or like
So
being a
now to
spoiled little
have
shit.
those luxuries, it's very nice, and it's nice to have those things. But in many cases, when somebody goes, "Oh, my iPhone screen cracked," meh, they're like, "Okay, but you can still use it, yeah?
Yes,
It's still
exactly.
functioning.
Hmm.
Your
Hmm.
life is not over. Cool.
That's right.
Moving
Yeah.
on." I
Yeah.
grew up in a singular shack made entirely of wood and other wood materials. The only concrete around was the foot pad that the staircase was built into, that left from the ground level up. Everything else about my home that I grew up in was well below what you're even complaining about right now. Like, you know, and then I can obviously understand then why people get that sort of microaggression. I'm ready to stab you in the side of your head. God, shut up.
Exactly.
You first world spoiled little ponce. Really?
And I swear she looks at me like that. She looks at me like I'm this spoilt kid, and I wasn't spoilt. I had a strict father who, you know, taught me to do things and go out and, you know, work for what I, you know, have to earn and doing all these things, right? And here she is, um, shaking her little like thin mattress out at night to make sure there's no scorpions in it. And this is legit. Like, this is what she had to, and she
Mm-hmm.
didn't get them every time too. She's been bitten when she was a kid by scorpions, and you know, parents in Asia, I find that they pass the wealth up. That's why they're still poor, is they can't accumulate like we can in the Western world, right? So, yeah, you're a great example. Me also is that, you know, our parents or grandparents work. When their grandparents pass away, they pass the wealth down to their kids, right? And then we can invest it, or we can build or buy a home, and then they invest it down. They pass it down to us. Whereas in Thailand and other countries, they don't do that. They've never had anything to start with. So when say, I'll use the example, if I was Thai and with my wife and we have a kid, we then have to go off and work and leave our kid with our mother-in-law, whatever,
Right. Right.
and they raise the kid while we send money home to them all the time, until the point where, you know, we're getting older and our kids are old enough to work, and then they'll go
Right,
off and work for us
it's a
because
self-perpetuating cycle. It's quite
absolutely.
literally it's structured in a way that pre-convenience, pre-technology, as an agricultural or industrial entirely driven system, that's fine. That actually doesn't inhibit all that much, but there's no growth potential in that self-perpetuating cycle.
Correct. They're
None
pretty
whatsoever.
happy just going
You
day
have
to
to
day.
you have to
You know.
find a third party to bring it in, because there's no, within that system, there's no like, I remember actually talking to an economist about this. It was more about the Vietnamese structure, but it's a very similar type of a structure. And I was saying, like, why is Vietnam as a communist country not in the same problematic space that China's finding itself? And it's because the Vietnamese have always kept that structure. They never removed it even under communism. They just applied Vietnamese communism to the same structure and called it their own. And it's created a catch-all for their population, but at the same time, the reason why Vietnam has not jumped off the page or expanded off the page when it comes to economics is because that system, unless the government or some outside entity, and since it's a communist country, really there's not many outside entities, it's really only the government. If the government does not inject money into that self-perpetuating cycle, there's no growth potential. It will not ever expand out of that. They will always stay as a downtrodden, slumped economy if that system is not modified. If money doesn't come from somewhere, that's part of the reason why all these new factories that are getting set up are being set up in such a way that the corporations have more or less full control over them, not like they had in China in the past, where the Chinese Communist Party retained control. In Vietnam, the companies actually have more control than the party does because of the way they structure their system.
Hmm.
So
And
in Thailand,
even going
I'm
back to China,
sure.
though, right? You can kind of answer this question, is that, you know, when they had the one child policy back in the day, and
Holy shit!
they
Boy,
were
did
still
that
doing the same thing.
backfire.
They were passing the wealth up, not down. And so
Right.
when they were finding that when a man was getting married to his wife, he was the only breadwinner at the time, who had to then support, like, you know, four parents then for his wife and
Right.
himself, and it was a real struggle over there. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they changed it to a two-child policy 3 years ago, and then this year they changed it to three-child policy, and then last month, I believe, they removed no limit policy. But it doesn't matter. People don't, most Chinese people in the last 10 years, well, particularly in the last 5 years, um, since the beginning of Donald Trump's administration, and the inevitable, and it started slow and now it's starting to pick up pace, the decoupling of the Chinese economy from the rest of the world, but particularly from the American and Australian markets, is causing people on the ground to recognize that the paper tiger pyramid scheme, this huge Ponzi scheme, may come crashing down really, really quickly. And the idea of having a bunch of kids right now, it doesn't matter if you have a Porsche in your driveway at the moment. Kids are not momentary. If you have kids, many kids, and the government has proven itself in the pandemic to not really give a shit about its population, why would you have that many kids when you potentially could be unemployed and penniless in a very short period of time? Why would you even engage in that? If anything, you want to try and retain as much money as possible, because when the shit hits the fan, you're going to need a little bit of a purse to help. So it doesn't matter that the limits have been removed. It's too late. They should have removed the limits when they started having a boom to their economy, because then they would have had a fuck ton of little babies to cover their huge deficit they're about to run into, which is this enormous group of people, which are more or less our age or 20 years in our senior, and that the people who are on the end of that spectrum are just a few years away from retirement age. And when they do go into retirement, it will no longer be 4 parents or 4 grandparents. It'll be 8 grandparents. And that's untenable, completely and utterly untenable in any market, regardless of who you are. You cannot expect that one singular earner is going to be able to cover 8 elderly parents, plus their property, plus their living expenses, and then on top of it, his own and his family's, and their future investments in education or anything else. That's a completely unrealistic and untenable sort of a reality. And that is coming, and they know it.
Yeah, it's scary what's to come, to be honest. Just the way
I'm glad we don't have to deal with that as much in the West. We're having some breakdowns in our population, but we don't have a problem structured like that. We can, whether we're the United States or more importantly a socialist country, we can change our tax law to cover the deficit and it not impact us at a social level, in the same way that in 20 years time, you're going to have people who live in an efficiency and work as a banker. If they have any dream of being able to even keep those mouths fed, and even then, many of those mouths may still be living in a squalor situation. But how else do you spread such a minute salary over such a wide range of requirements?
Yeah. Oh man, that's again another good subject we can talk about another time. Like really to go deep
China's
into
a
that.
whole nother. China's a serious
it's a whole nother
topic.
beast.
Actually, I would love to have a China talk, but that's a whole nother. Serious.
I'm down for that. Absolutely down for that. Okay, so back to your life. We're getting to the tail end of it now. So this is up to where you currently are, and you work for yourself, doing sort of contracting for a few different things, right? So doing some engineering and contracting. What does the future hold for Taco Truck?
What's
on the cards? What's the plan?
Well, I have a couple of patent applications in, and if I'm given the patent for one of them, then I'm going to try and license the patent off immediately to Belkin. It's a wireless charging accessory for mobile phones, but it is legitimately wireless. There is not a single wire connected to the damn thing anywhere.
Wow.
It does not have a battery pack, and it uses wireless charging to charge your phone. But that's all I'm going to say, because
don't say too much.
Waiting on a patent.
That's right. Well, that's a cool thing. That's exciting, actually. Is that far away for you, or is it pretty close to happening?
I hope it's pretty close. The applications were filed a couple of months ago. The prototypes were made. Proof of concept was made. We already have a purchase order if we can get the patent approved.
Wow. I've got to
Yeah.
say, just from speaking to you, these couple of times, and again listening to your talks, if anyone can do it, it's you, man. You are, you're super intelligent and you're driven, and you've got like wisdom behind you. For someone our age already, I feel like you've come a far way, man. So I've got to give you some credit there, man. Okay. I've got the questions open to the public now, so there is a couple of bubbles sitting there. So if anyone does want to ask a question to Taco Truck at all or add to the podcast, feel free to do so. I'm going to pop the next couple of bubbles. One's been sitting there for a little while. It's from Mo Camps. I'm not sure if she's still listening, but here we go.
Oh,
Mo Camps.
hi, Minnie.
Hey boys, just passing by to say hi. Hope you're both doing well, and I'll stick around for a little bit as I lay myself down to slumber. Love you.
She may have passed
I
out
think
by
she
now, getting
took
some
off.
beauty sleep.
Yeah.
Yep. Next, we've got my brother Worm Million. Worm and I have got a show on tomorrow called The Great Debate. So if anyone's listening, you
Ooh.
feel free to join. That's just going to be before our other show, Taco Truck, of What Would You Add to Stereo. So for now,
Oh,
we've
yeah.
got Worm Million.
Hey, what up to my guy Rocstedi, and what's going on? Taco Truck, you guys are talking about corporatocracies and all sorts of fun stuff, which is right up my alley. Hope you guys are having a great night.
Thanks, brother. Great to hear from you. Thanks for chiming in.
Thank
Taco
you,
Truck.
sir.
I've got a little thing that we do to wind up a podcast here that I'm trying to do with this conversations series that we're doing. It's 20 questions in 30 seconds, but I'm going to scrap the 30 seconds, just punch through the questions as quick as possible. Are you happy to play that?
Okay.
It's okay? You sounded
Shoot.
doubtful. All right, so we just got to pop the question, the answer off as quick as possible, all right? So one of them is, have your parents ever seen you naked as an adult?
Yes.
Okay, who would you turn straight for?
That's a damn good question. I don't know. I have not ever thought about it. Really.
Okay.
This is the very first time, and it's a hard one.
Okay, we can skip it if you like. That's cool. So do you prefer
Let's
bods?
come back to that one.
We'll come back to that. That's okay. Do you prefer dad bods or chiseled six packs?
Chisel six pack.
Okay. How long does it take you to get ready before you head out the door?
Depends on what it is.
Okay. Have you ever considered plastic surgery, and if so, for what?
No.
Have you ever seriously injured somebody before?
Yes.
Have you ever been arrested?
Yes.
Okay. If you wanted to kill me, how would you do it?
Oh. I'd probably use a clandestine service.
All right. So, a reason that you've dumped a partner in the past before.
I'm sorry?
A reason that you've dumped a partner in the past.
Oh. Not communicating.
Okay. So, an embarrassing moment that's happened to you before.
Pass.
If you could change one thing in the world, what would it be?
Oh, shit. Acceptance.
Okay. If you held a world record, what would it be for?
The world's largest special effects show.
Nice one. Okay, so if you could be any insect, what would you be?
Praying mantis.
What location in the world are you least likely to visit?
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. Okay, so what's the one app that you couldn't live without?
Safari.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought you were going to say stereo, but Safari's a good one. Could you survive without your cell phone?
Well, I think I just answered that one.
Okay. In an ideal world, how many hours a day would you be awake?
21.
21. And last questions. If you could go back to school for 1 year, which grade would you choose?
Second year engineering degree.
Nice. And we're going to go back to who would you turn straight for?
Honestly, probably Dolly Parton.
Why?
Because I think she's kind of amazing.
Well, I just heard someone on the podcast, Joey Butts, talking about her, how amazing she was actually just about a week ago. Yeah, I didn't really realize myself how quite amazing she is. So it's probably a
Yeah,
pretty damn
like
good choice.
legitimately. She's also
Yeah.
beautiful. She's also
Yep.
incredibly talented. But as a human being, yeah, that is a pretty amazing turn on for me.
Yeah. No, she's super talented actually. So, okay, so what did you get arrested for too? I want to know.
I was in possession of a diplomatic pouch that was not the pouch I was supposed to be in possession of. If that makes any sense. I was supposed to
Yes,
have a
it does.
USA diplomatic pouch, and I had a different one, and I was arrested upon arrival to a country because they thought I stole it, and then they realized that where I had been departing from, myself and the other person who I guess was a courier for a diplomatic mission had to take their pouch out for security just to wave down their person. You know, you don't go through an x-ray, but they have to make sure you're not like actually carrying a gun or anything on you. Which is, I always thought was kind of funny because you could have a gun in the pouch. They're not allowed to scan the pouch or check it in any way. But you're also not allowed to have it on your person. So whatever.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah. So they arrested me and they detained me for 8 hours in the United States on a what's it called? Like a spying charge.
Okay.
Espionage charge.
Espionage, yeah. Okay.
They held me on an espionage charge, and then they got in touch with they were able to get in touch with the other courier, and the courier I guess was still in the air or something. I don't know. It was very, very confusing. All I know is at the end of it, they said, we're going to take this and the pouch that you were supposed to be in possession of will make its way to its destination. You're going back from whence you came.
Yeah, right.
And that was it.
Okay. Well, lucky nothing more
I don't know
happened
what
then.
happened to it. I don't know. It's a mystery to me, and the inner workings of governments are always a mystery until you kind of see how the mechanism works, and you're like, oh, okay, cool. It's always
nothing.
You don't need to know anything unless you're a part of the read-in list, and most people aren't. So it's just a big mystery for everybody, and there's a huge fucking bureaucracy that has to deal with this big ass mystery.
Absolutely. We've got a message from Worm just before we close up the show, so let's hear what Worm's got to say.
Rock, did you really just ask why he picked Dolly Parton? Because she sings amazingly. She's got a great voice, obviously.
It's more than the voice.
Also, it's much more than the voice. I mean, she gives to all sorts of different things. She set up Dollywood as a theme park. Really, I mean, you can say that she makes a buttload of money with it, but she set it up to primarily support a bunch of different foundations and things that she wanted to fund, but didn't have enough money to do it at the time. And like, just what was it, in 2019 or 2020, the beginning of 2020, she gave a fuck ton of money to Moderna to develop the COVID vaccine.
All right.
She gave more money to Moderna than Moderna took from the federal government, from the U.S. government, from Trump.
Wow.
So it's like, if anybody wants to thank her for anything, I got the Moderna jab. Thanks, lady. Did a great job.
That's it. All right, Taco, we're gonna wind this up now. 'Cause I like to punch it right in 2 hours here. Thank you for your time. It's been awesome to
Absolutely.
get to know you, man, and for you to share your life. I really appreciate that. It's just been nice to get to know you on a much more personal level, and obviously we're going to be doing some more weekly shows together, which I'm excited about. I'm really excited to connect with you and do these things, man, because like I said, I had a genuine connection with you from last time we spoke. So
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. This was
yeah,
a
it
lot of
was.
fun too.
Yeah, I had a great time myself. Now, just before we go, I do ask the person I'm interviewing to throw another verified check mark under the bus next. Who would you like me to interview out of your friends or anyone on Stereo?
It has to be another verified person.
Yes.
I'd like you to interview Jose the Hype.
Jose the Hype. Okay, I'll organise it with him. I am in contact with him, so I'll follow it up with him. But just in case, I'll get you to give him a little push along. But should be fun to hear from Jose. So he's next on the list. Also, Thotty Scotty's floating around there whenever he gets a chance. He said he's pretty busy, but he will get there. So, any questions, final questions from any of the listeners? Now's the time to quickly ask before we wrap it up. But if you're not already, give us a follow on social media. You're on Instagram, Taco Truck, and Twitter. Yes.
I am.
Any other social
Even
platforms?
though I don't really use Twitter, I just sort of connected it, and then I was like, meh, I don't really like Twitter. It's full of a bunch of people that I
not my
don't
kind of thing
particularly
either.
get along with.
Yep. But it's on
And
Instagram.
if I was a
Taco Truck.
keyboard warrior, I would be totally headlong into Twitter. Definitely invested. But that's a problem. I'm really not. I prefer to use my voice instead of typey mad all in caps.
I'm the same. I'm much the same. Yeah, you can also give us a follow as well on Facebook, Rocstedi. Instagram is _Rocstedi, same as Twitter, _Rocstedi. So I'll be popping this video up on YouTube too for the whole series of conversations we are the people. Mr. Taco Truck, it's been a genuine pleasure to speak to you again, and I'm looking forward to our show tomorrow, right about this time, actually, right on this time.
Yep.
So the show will be What Would You Add to Stereo? So we will be having a special guest joining us too from your side, and we can kind of communicate with the community and see what we can make some nice suggestions for Stereo for some cool improvements or just some ideas so they can we can brainstorm on their behalf. That'll be great.
Yeah. Either way.
Thank you very much.
It'll be a lot of fun.
It will be, always. You have a great evening ahead, Mr. Taco Truck. I appreciate your time, and we'll certainly stay in touch. Thank you, man.
Yeah, for sure. Be good.
All the best.